They say when a baby is born, so is a mother. But while you are there to help your baby grow into the person he or she is meant to be, who is there to help you? Many women feel lost and alone when they become mothers, wondering, who am I now? Sometimes it feels like the transformation from woman to mother is as radical as a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Did you know that inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar literally turns into goop before it rearranges itself into a butterfly? This podcast is about the goop, what soul transformation looks like as you transition from being a woman to a mom. Your baby's growth matters, but yours does too. You're not alone. I'm your host, Brittany Ming. Welcome to the Motherhood Metamorphosis.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I'm your host, Brittany Ming, and today we're talking to Traci Rhoades. Traci is a writer and a Bible teacher. She lives in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area with her family. She's the author of Not All Who Wander Spiritually Are Lost. Welcome, Traci. I'm really happy to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's nice to get a chance to speak with you too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we were chatting about what to talk about, and you said that you had a story to share about growing in critical thinking skills and how that's influencing the way that you're raising your daughter. And I was just really fascinated by this topic because we think about ourselves growing as people, or sometimes we don't think about that. We only focus on our kids, but our own growth really does affect the way that we parent. And so I just was really interested in hearing your story about this and why it's close to your heart.
Well, we, depending on when your listeners listen to this, we are very close to Halloween. It's 2 days away as we record this. And that is one story that I could tell. There are many, as I've been parenting for almost 14 years now. But when our daughter was little, we decided we were absolutely not going to do Halloween. Like that was pagan holiday, and we would find some other way to, celebrate a fall harvest festival or some type of thing. And she was probably 2 or 3 at the time. And my sister-in-law was taking her kids trick-or-treating, and there was like just some community event at a church where they were going to give candy. It was completely harmless. And she's like, "You're going to join us, right?" And I was like, "Well, we're not going to do Halloween," and you start to offer these explanations, and they're completely legitimate. But as you consider the innocent activities that they were going to participate in, you start to question yourself. And then she was probably 4, and a friend invited her to go trick-or-treating with her downtown. It was like 4 to 6, I think. So completely, during the day, it was fine. At the time, my daughter was already wearing princess costumes, like day in and day out anyway. So she always had a costume on. So we just threw on the Tiana, Princess Tiana costume, and we did go do that trick-or-treating. And she was hooked, right? Because you get all this candy and you see all these fun costumes. And so I looked back on the process. Time was writing ready, and so shared about our experience online. And I had a friend who wrote me and said, "We just look at it as a wonderful way to Halloween well." And I loved that idea. It's like, you don't have to make it super scary. You don't have to, dive into the dark parts that might be Halloween. You can put your child in a very normal costume, and they can go and they can join the others. You can, certainly be in community with the other parents who are doing such things too. And it really gave me a different spin on holidays like that, rather than always having to separate ourselves. I realized as I thought through it that Halloween could be just another opportunity to be a light for Christ, and to do the exact same things that we are trying to do in other areas of our life as well.
Right. And to make it something that it's not about being separate, but being a joiner and bringing joy to your daughter as well.
Right. Absolutely. Yep.
She obviously had a great time wearing her princess costume and getting lots of candy.
Yes. Yes. And really knowing now how drawn she is to, she's loves musicals. She's very drawn to theater. It's a great holiday for her because she's always enjoyed picking out the costumes and finding just the right outfit and just the right hairstyles. So it's a match with her personality as well, for sure.
Yeah. I like how you were able to think about your own fears or your own reservations that you brought into your motherhood experience. But when you met your daughter and you realized who she is, then you're like, oh, I'm reevaluating these things that I'm bringing in with myself, like into our story, as opposed to saying, nope, this is it. This is what we're going to do forever. We don't do Halloween.
Those are the jokes that we tell ourselves, right? Before you're a mom, you think you know exactly how you're going to mother, but yeah, doesn't always work that way. And it was, like I say, she was 4 or 5 before we really started going ahead and jumping into Halloween. And so she had been old enough to hear mom say, no, we don't do that, and that's not going to be, a family choice that we make. And so it was a good opportunity for me to explain to her too what we wanted Halloween to look like, and if we were going to participate, what that was going to mean for our family. So yeah, very good process for sure.
Did you have the other conversation with her about changing your mind? Like, what did that look like when you changed your mind, when you did something different?
Yeah, it helped to write about it, being a writer. And so I think I shared just a big part of my process with her, how this is where mom and dad were. And what our focus was on was more protecting her, I would say, from what could be a dark side of things, and from introducing her to things, haunted houses and scary stuff that even if she ever does those things, she was still years away from. To the other side of the coin, like you said, bringing joy, to an evening and enjoying being part of a community who is doing things in a perfectly safe and normal way. So yeah, we definitely could see, as with most topics, you can go to a side of it that is not good and not healthy, and we don't want to go there, to the other side of we can make this something that is good for us and do it the way that we want to do it.
Yeah, I like how you talked about the joy and leaning into that, because sometimes when we change our minds, there's a lot of fear around changing our mind. Like, what are people going to think of me? I was really adamant in one direction. Or what are my kids going to think of me because I'm changing my mind? But I think sometimes when we can lean into the joy of making a new decision and like walking in that way, it can make our relationship with our kids stronger, because we're showing them that, hey, I'm a human too. Like, I can change my mind and we can walk in joy together in a new direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that very much. And at the same time, teaching them how to do that in their own life situations. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, there was a lot of emphasis on making right decisions growing up. And when you make that decision, you walk in it and you stay steadfast, you don't quit things, whether it was like in my faith life or even just you chose this sport, so you're going to carry it on like through the whole semester, like the whole summer. And I think that as I've grown older, I've given myself the permission to say, this isn't working anymore for me, and I need to make a different choice. And I think that when I have listened to my intuition on that, it's always served me well when I've said, I need to stop and I need to go into another direction. Has that resonated with you in your own motherhood journey?
Yes. And I would say it is probably it is a very difficult part of parenting, because taking your examples of does she continue doing a sport that she signed up for the whole season, or do you just allow her a month of it? You can tell it's totally not her thing, or engaging how much of it is emotion and how much of it is, this is hard for me. And so, kids, just like adults, have to learn to push through. I mentioned earlier that my daughter loves being on stage. And when she was in 5th grade, she tried out for the school musical. They, depending on the size of the musical cast, they will include elementary school, middle schoolers. And so she was going to try out as a 5th grader. And she walked into the auditorium, and there were 2 or 3 upperclassmen, high schoolers, like they've been doing this for a while, and they were warming up and practicing the songs they were going to try out to. And she got this deer in the headlights look, like, what have I gotten myself into? And she just started crying. And she's like, Mom, I'm not going to try out. I can't do this. Like, she was completely intimidated. And I knew she wanted to do it, had for years talked about being in these plays. And so I talked to her a little bit, but it was quite obvious she wasn't going to get calmed down enough to go do what she needed to that afternoon. And so we got home and talked it over with my husband, talked it over with her extensively. We contacted her teacher, kind of, let her walk through some things with her. And the next day she went and she tried out, and she had worked through some of those jitters and did get a part. So she was very excited. But that whole night and into the next day, we're like, are we pushing her? Is she old enough? Even if this is what she wants to do, maybe now is not the year. So yes, you constantly, and again, I think my husband and I do a good job of walking her through that as well, and letting her at least have a voice in those decisions. She's not necessarily the decision maker, but she certainly walks through the pros and cons with us and expresses her feelings. And often if it is more or less just a fear of trying something new and maybe hard and challenging, we're probably going to give her that push.
Yeah, we had a really similar experience with my son. We moved here to Illinois very recently, and my son wanted to join band. And he had been in band in 6th grade. Now he's in 8th grade, but for 7th grade, we homeschooled COVID year. So he wasn't in any band. So he went into the first week of band, and everybody was a lot more advanced than he was because he hadn't done band for a year. And he came home like 3 days into school and is like, I want to quit band. I want to quit band. And I was just had that horrible sinking feeling because he's had a hard time finding his thing.
Yeah.
And when he was in band in 6th grade, I could see that light in his eyes, and I could see how he felt like part of a group. And I wanted that experience for him. And now that he was saying he wanted to quit, I just wanted to like buckle down and say like, no, like you need to keep doing this. Like you need to keep pursuing this. Don't quit. But my husband was the one who talked to Micah a lot about it. And he said, it's okay if you want to quit. And that was tough for me because my husband saw that it was band as the very first class of his day. And that was coloring his frustration and feeling like he wasn't enough was coloring the rest of his day. Oh. So we said, okay, is this going to affect him mentally in a really negative way if we make him do band and he's continually feeling like he can't do it and he feels frustrated? So my husband said, for his mental health, I think we should let him quit. That was really tough for me because I wanted to say like, no, don't be a quitter. Like you got to pursue this. Like you got to push forward. And that I think had more to do with me than it had to do with my son. Mm-hmm. And so it's like working through my own stuff and realizing like, what is it about my relationship with my son that needs to be about him and not about me? So anyway, that was me thinking about myself. But the way it turned out was I did call the band director and I said that he's going to quit. And the band director convinced him to stay. And he did. And I actually just went to his little concert last night and I saw him up there playing his clarinet with all the other kids. And like, it was really good. I'm like, he stuck with it and he's improved, and the band director was really encouraging to him. So it all ended well. But it's tough when you have those situations where you're wrestling with something in yourself and you see something in your kid that you don't want them to quit or give up or do whatever. But yeah, that's hard when you want them to grow, but you realize like you have your own growth to do in that area as well.
Yes. Well, and I'm so thankful, and often will reflect on the fact that I have my husband to bounce all of these ideas off of. And no, we don't always agree either on how to parent, but we walk through it and talk about it and weigh things. And I think of those single parents who are out there trying to do this on their own, because you face situations like this way more than I thought you than I thought you would. So yeah, just an encouragement to them. I hope they do find, the teachers or the band directors or friends or parents who are able to talk through these things with them, because it's a huge part of it, to feel like you're not alone. Somebody else is caring for your kid and thinking through these decisions too. That's huge.
Yeah. So share with me some more about how your own growth as a person has affected your mothering experience, and how like that symbiotic relationship like moves you forward and moves your relationship with your daughter forward.
Well, again, I'm going to dive a little bit into the writing that I do. My writing is very faith-based, and I write a lot about church experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And that can go anywhere from really good and having a good experience to really hard. And I'm maybe going to have to step away from church for a while, to everywhere in between. And especially as I've been writing, as I interact on social media, I realize how important it is to not just use my lens, to not just have my experience about a church, but to consider how everyone encounters it. And that goes across the board to considering who a person that has been a cradle Catholic might experience church, to how someone who is trying a charismatic church for the first time might experience church. And I share this with my daughter often, not that she sits down and reads my adult writings about such things, but we talk about it. And if we're watching a movie, I will mention, the fact that this is, she likes My Big Fat Greek Wedding, for example, and they are a Greek Orthodox family. So I'll say, you remember what we've learned about the Greek Orthodox. And she has visited 3 or 4 completely different churches than what we personally attend. And after each time we kind of walk through, okay, how was that different? And what made you feel comfortable? What felt like the experience that And so again, just these little pushes to realize what I, as a writer and as an adult woman, have experienced times 10 compared to what I'm sharing with my daughter. Just what it's like to try to walk in someone else's shoes, right? Mm-hmm. To have, in this case, a church experience that is completely different than what I have, but yet can still be a legitimate, wonderful, worshipful experience.
Mm-hmm. So as you're sharing this, I can tell that this is something that you're passionate about. I'm wondering if when you share that passion with your daughter, when you like visit these different churches and you have these conversations, is that something that feels natural to you? Like, is it natural to share who you are with your child? Or is it something that you've had to work on, like opening up your heart and saying, hey, this is who I am, and I want to share this part of my life with you?
Growing up, I only attended one church and would not, well, a couple of churches, but would not have done this, would not have visited like this. And my mom certainly was exploring these kinds of things. So there's always a part of me that's like, be sure you're giving her the foundation, right? Like, you don't want her to grow up with some wigged out version of faith either. And so I would say probably at the beginning, I was a little more hesitant about sharing my experiences. But what I found was you could explore all of these things and you could learn about completely different ways that people were attending church and still really love your own church experience and still grow in your faith just by exploring a little bit, and it's a running joke around here. Anytime she attends somewhere, for example, my mom lives in Houston, and I took my mom and my daughter to a Russian Orthodox church, which is a completely different experience. A lot of their own Eastern culture built into the church service. And afterwards, and after any time that we attend a drastically different church, she always says, I like my own church. And I think, well, it's really, really not a bad thing, right? Right to hand her. So yeah, she's been able to encounter those different things and understand how they're different, also how they're the same, because it can feel like a very different experience, and you can still walk away knowing that there was common ground too. And I think that's important for her to experience. So as we've done this and as I've continued to grow, I think I've gotten bolder in what I will share with her, and in trusting that her faith is going to be just fine, even if it's wide.
Right. Yeah. I like how you said, I've become bolder. And I think maybe you think you've become bolder in your own experience, like exploring, but bolder in sharing like this part of your life with her and saying, hey, let's do this together. That's not just your journey. Like you're inviting her to come along with you on this journey that you're discovering and learning more. And you want to invite her into that experience as well. And I think that can be really connecting for moms and kids to say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, let's visit this place together. Let's read this book. Like, what do you think about this? And I think that's become easier for me as my kids have gotten older. But that's taken practice, because I think for a long time, it's been easier for me to just keep myself to myself and not share who I am and what I'm learning and who I'm becoming with my children, because it takes a lot of emotional energy to do that. And sometimes it almost feels too vulnerable to do that with my kids. Like, what if they don't care? Does that mean like they don't care about me? Like, what if they think that's dumb or weird? But I think that as I made choices, and I continue to do this because I'm not very good at this yet, as I continue to make choices to show my kids like who I am, I think we become closer, and like there is a greater bond, a connection when I say like, hey, this is my favorite movie, or like, this is my favorite museum to look at art, or will you listen to this song with me? Like, this means a lot, or whatever it may be, to invite them into my experience as a person and let them see myself. I think that's been hard for me, but I want to do it more.
Well, I think if we look at it as mom is on a journey too, right? We're not coming to you as an adult who has arrived, who has a perfect personality that's always going to get it right, right? So if they understand that we're just on a journey like they are, and as you're talking, I think it's a real gift to them to teach them as early as you can. We don't always do exactly what you want to do or are interested in. Maybe you could give two hoots about art, but we're going to go to the Smart Art Museum together. There's usually a section, right, where little kiddos can work on art projects themselves. I don't know of any kid that wouldn't enjoy, so still make it like age appropriate. I mean, you don't want them to be like, okay, don't talk, we're going to go to this Mozart, whatever. But including them in it and helping them see, gosh, I wish I had learned this better as a child myself. There's probably something in most things you would do that you will enjoy. I remember the first time I went to a NASCAR race. I don't care about NASCAR. Like, I barely even know who any of those players are. But wow, the crowd, the people watching is amazing. The noise that those cars make as they go around the track, they make this like, it's just completely captivating. So yeah, if we can offer our kids that opportunity to realize it's a great big world, and the things that maybe you don't think you like, you'll probably find something to like in them.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think that realizing that as a woman, I want to invite my children into my world too, not just completely say, I'm all about you. We're only going to do what the kids want to do. We're only going to eat at the places the kids like to eat. We're only going to go to the churches that have the good kid programs. Like, my experience as a person matters too. And it doesn't mean doesn't mean that I can't invite my kids into my world. I think we forget about that. At least I forget about that. Sometimes I think I make my life only about my kids and forget that, like, I'm a person that needs to show up in my family as who I am, not just the person who makes the food or cleans up the clothes or, sings whatever song they want me to sing at night or reads whatever book they want to read, before bed. Like, saying, hey, let's read Alice in Wonderland because this is one of my favorite books that I read when I was a kid, and bringing that experience to them, I think, is a way of growth and connection, but sometimes can feel scary, because you're showing who you are to your kids.
Yeah, that brings to mind, it's kind of a somber point, but I have a friend that I grew up with back home who lost her mom when she was in high school, and has had all of these years of getting married and having children, and her mom was not around to experience any of that. And she will often say, I wish I knew my mom's favorite movie, or if I had known I was going to lose her so soon, I would have put her in 100 pictures. She never liked being the one in the pictures. So yeah, it really drives that point home. We want our children to know us, right? Because love's a relationship. It's a two-sided thing. So yeah, and you're right. I mean, when you're going through, day in and day out, and you're making the lunches and you're, running to this practice and this athletic event, etc., you can forget that our worlds can orbit around them pretty easily. And some of that is necessary. It's a busy time of their life, but maybe when they get in the car, you put on the station you like, and you say, we're not gonna, listen to XYZ for the 100th time. We're going to listen to this today because mom likes this playlist. Or, like, I love the idea too that you shared of, this was my favorite book as a child. Like, if I pulled out, and I did do this one time too, where I remember we were on a road trip and I switched it to the George Strait playlist because I listened to a lot of country music. And she's like, Mom, these songs are so depressing. And I was like, oh, no, what if she doesn't like George Strait? Well, now she does. We're fine. But yeah, I mean, what if you never break out George Strait and your kid doesn't know, So yeah.
Yeah, that's really important. I haven't done this in a few months, but for a few, like, very concentrated times where I was feeling very invisible in my family, I realized that they didn't know, like, funny anecdotes from my childhood. So at dinner, I was like, okay, we're going to have story time with mom. And I'm going to tell you a funny story of when I was a kid. And they're like the most non sequitur stories ever, where you're like, this funny thing happened when the hamster got out. And then, like, the end. But then, like, every night my kids were saying, Mom, tell us another story or tell us this. And I want those stories to be the ones that they retell, to their friends on the sleepover. Like, let me tell you this funny time when my mom was little, or when they have their own kids, because that's what builds up your family history. Like that's what carries the legacy. And I think that I had to purposely make that choice because it's so easy just to be the one in the background, like the one that makes the magic happen, but is never seen. And I think that for me, being seen meant making like purposeful decisions to keep showing up and showing them who I am and that I'm growing, and like having those maybe weird conversations about like, hey, this is where I am right now and what I'm thinking. What do you think about that? Mm-hmm. So, especially as my kids have gotten to be teenagers, like my older ones, it's tough and sometimes it's weird, but I feel better about showing up as a person as opposed to just making my whole life about being just the mom.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And it goes a long way in teaching them respect, in teaching them about lots of differences, right? Because you're not just like your kids aren't all alike. And so certainly a discussion that you can have then across the board too, so and so on their birthday wants to go get Japanese. I know you don't like Japanese, but surely we can find something that so yeah. And what good humans that would create, right? If we could just have them accept the fact that not everyone's going to be just like them, and they're not going to always do exactly what they want to do. It's part of the growing up process for sure.
Yeah. This was great. So what would you tell another woman who's walking in a path of maybe wanting to explore different things in her life, and she's wondering, maybe I'm changing my mind about some things, like how should she approach that with her kids? Like what's a phrase she can use, or a point of bravery that you could give her as she's maybe using critical thinking skills to influence how she raises her kids?
I like the word that has come up in our conversation already, a journey. That shows that there's not an arrival, and letting your kids know yes, I may be older, but I'm still learning so many things just like you are. And being willing to ask questions, and again, I think, we're the parent, we're supposed to be the one with the answers. But if you let your kids know, I'm asking this question, and boy, what a world we live in, that we can go to the internet, that we can find, a book on this topic. I know for probably 3 or 4 years, I was very interested in exploring Jewish holidays and festivals, and in particular, how they observe them today, right? Because we can read in scripture how they are observed that way, but what does someone who observes Passover as a Jewish person today look like? Mm-hmm. And so I have a collection of maybe 5 or 6 books that talk about Purim, that talk about Passover. And they're just little children's books. My daughter and I read every one together. And again, just a basic introduction, so that if she comes across a Jewish individual someday and they're like, I built a booth in my backyard and I'm going to stay in that for a week, she's like, she's heard about it. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know that people do that. My mom read me a book once, or, a TV show, a movie. There's so many ways to introduce us and our families, our children, to new ideas that maybe we explored first, but now we can share with them.
Yeah, I love that. Those are great ideas. Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that you got the books for her about things that you were interested in. That's great. That's a great point. Well, to end our time together, I always like to ask these 10 rapid fire questions to guests, and they're just for fun. So don't have any worries about this. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Which Disney princess would you like to take out to coffee?
To coffee. I am a big Merida fan from Brave.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear her accent.
Yes. Yes, that's great. What's one thing you must have on your nightstand?
A book, probably plural.
Yes, more than one. You got to have the stack. Like, you never know what mood you're in.
It might fall.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
What's your go-to treat after your daughter, maybe when she was little, when she would go to bed? What was your treat that you love to have?
We keep a stash. As she's gotten older, we have to find new hiding places. We keep a stash of chocolate, like a little Lindt chocolate, or just a bite size something or another. But she's gotten very, very good at always finding them.
What is an ordinary moment in life that brings you great joy?
We have a great back porch, and I often wonder if there's like some healing power on a back porch or something, because those first few days of spring when it's warm enough to sit out there, those are glorious. Yeah, certainly moments of joy.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. The last show you binged and loved?
We're in the middle of watching The Voice right now. I don't know that we binge watch it though, because we do watch it faithfully once a week. I would say, we really enjoyed, and we would watch this after our daughter went to bed. We really enjoyed the Longmire series.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
There were 3 or 4 seasons, and he is a sheriff in a very small Wyoming town, and it butts up to a Native American reservation. And almost every show begins with someone having died. And so the sheriff comes in to solve the mystery, and the Native American police, I don't think they call themselves policemen, but anyway, the Native American side comes in too, and lots of drama and lots of different characters that you got very involved with. Yeah, we could easily watch 3 of those in a night and be like, okay, I guess I have to go to bed.
Yeah, that's great. That sounds really good. I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah.
If you run out of this besides milk, you have to go to the store.
That's a very good question. The first thing that comes to mind is butter, which probably doesn't speak very highly of our health. But yeah, we use it in so many things in baking, and yeah. And a shout out to my mother-in-law, because I certainly have learned that from her. You don't live in a household that has run out of butter.
Who makes you laugh?
Oh, my daughter. Yeah, I have an only child. I probably didn't mention that at the beginning, but she's the only one I've talked about. So, and the reason why she's super funny and has a double dose of the gift of sarcasm, which can totally be not age appropriate. So sometimes we're laughing and telling her, you really can't say that though, like not at your age. So yeah, she keeps us in stitches for sure.
That's great. I love kids like that, where you're just like laughing so hard and you're like, let's not say that again.
Yeah. However, yeah, exactly.
What are you looking forward to?
I told you before we got on the call, we just had a short vacation. We take a fishing trip each year as a family, and it has left me longing for Thanksgiving and Christmas. We just came off this very unfortunate reason for spending so much time at home with the pandemic. But as things kind of open up again and we're back to more of a regular school year, I know I've talked to several of my friends, and we would include ourselves as well. We miss the family time. You're hesitant to get all that busy again if you can avoid it, because yeah, the time together, the holidays coming up will be very special.
All right, last one. Finish this sentence. Motherhood is
life-changing for sure, for so many reasons that we talked about. But what a great opportunity and motivation to keep growing and changing yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
A better and better mom. Yeah. In person.
Mm-hmm. To end up our time, I would love to share where to find you on social media. And first, I would love you to tell us about your Advent booklet that you offer to people and where they can find that.
Yes, that is a new project that I actually worked with my local church on. They approached me this summer and asked if I would write 23 reflections to be included in a booklet. And they also asked my daughter if she would illustrate 6 different pictures to include in the booklet. She's a talented artist. And so what an honor to do that project together. And knowing that I am a writer as well, they offered to let me share that booklet with my email subscribers. And I will have a limited amount of hard copies as well, to use in giveaways and send to loyal readers, that kind of stuff. So that is a exciting project that's coming up. The end of November is when Advent starts. So I would say probably, about the third week around Thanksgiving, the book will be available. And again, it's to my email subscribers, and they can sign up and get more information on that at tracesoffaith.com.
All right. That's great. I'll be sure to share that before Advent so that people can look that up. That's really a cool resource. And really neat that your daughter illustrated some of the passages for it. That's cool.
Yeah.
What a
So
neat
special.
project.
Yeah. It was fun. Really fun.
All right. You can also find Traci at Twitter at Traces of Faith, Instagram, and Facebook at Traces of Faith blog. Well, thank you so much, Traci. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Next, tell your friends. Podcasts are a slow growth type of social media, so promo works best when it's from person to person. If you know another mom who's in the goop right now, send her a text of encouragement and the link to the episode that is speaking to your heart right now. If you have a story about your own matrescence, the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition that occurs when someone becomes a mother, please leave a comment below. I want this channel to be a place where women can build community about the challenges and joys of their own motherhood metamorphosis. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope it encouraged you and gave you some good food for thought. If you ever have any questions, comments, or you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can email me at brittanyaming@gmail.com.
Sneaky. You can't take mom's chocolate. It's no good.
Right, exactly.
No, you need to have butter for toast or cooking
Yes,
eggs.
so many
You need
things.
to have it. There's just no
Yes.
substitute. You can't just put olive oil on your toast,
Right.
You gotta have butter. I agree.